Hall Council chambers. In addition, we are also still streaming. So we welcome all that may be joining in either venue. Let's make sure that we can do business tonight by doing a roll call vote, not a vote, but a roll call. Councilwoman Ivy?
Here.
Councilwoman Meekum?
Present.
Councilman Ince?
Here.
Councilwoman Fillmore?
Present.
And Councilman McEwen?
Here.
So we have all five of the city council present, and thank you very much for being here. So we can proceed ahead. Let's start with the prayer thought by Councilwoman Ivy.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet together tonight to conduct the business of our city. We're grateful for the beautiful weather we're having, grateful for the peaceful circumstances that we find ourselves in. And we pray for thy spirit to be attending with us tonight, that we can make good decisions. We are grateful for those who are our first responders and put themselves in the way of harm to protect us. We're grateful for those who work in our public works and our parks and here at City Hall and the many things that are rarely seen but that help the city to smoothly move forward and to be an enjoyable community for all who live here. We're so grateful for their efforts, and we pray for thy blessing to be upon this city and to be upon all those who work here. And we're thankful for all of these things and pray for thy blessing upon us tonight. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilwoman Ivy. If you would all rise with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's got to be one of the best things of being back together, and having you all say it. It carries with it so much power when we're all saying it versus me just saying it while everybody else is muted. So that's always an honor and a privilege to be able to do that. Let's start with the open session tonight. This is an opportunity that anyone that may be here, or you'll see on your screen a call-in number to just bring up anything that might be on your mind, that try and keep it to a couple of minutes, and identify yourself and where you're from when you do that. So I will now open that open session.
Mayor.
Come on up, right here to this pulpit. Sorry,
Thanks for the opportunity to
I
talk.
should have said, come on up, just walk up here, so.
Here's my hand. I'm Drew Webb. I live on Mountain View Road. And there was a group of neighbors that are concerned about the swamp in the back and how it was clear cut with all the trees gone now. There's no buffer zone, and there's a sightly road passage that we have to look at. And we want some answers on what we have planned for that area back there. We were hoping to find out if there was any funds available to put some trees or some kind of maintenance plan put together, because it's just a big mess now.
Thank you for your comment. I know that Public Works went out and met with some of the neighbors, and did you want to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, it's actually
Yeah.
on my city manager report to bring that up, so I'll be happy to bring it up right now. After we had seen, the clear cut, I mean, it's great to see all that brush and all that cleared out, which it looks great, but I understand some of the concerns, and the visibility that was once there is no longer there. We do have a concept plan that was developed years ago in that area of bridges over the river area and some benches and a walkway. It was just a concept plan, but I think at a minimum, what Bruce and Public Works and what we're looking at doing is looking at, see what the cost would be to put some trees along the fence line once again, just to beautify the area. I think there is some obligation from the city to make sure it's beautified and taken care of, and also what can we do to keep the weeds down? Here's where it gets tricky, is it's a wetland area, which is managed by the Army Corps of Engineers, and to do any of that type of work. Now, clearing brush is okay. However, if we're trying to talk about putting in any irrigation, sprinkler lines, or grass, we have to get a permit. And we've got to get the okay from the Army Corps. And so we've actually started that process of getting that permit. We're using that concept plan developed years ago as the argument of give us an opportunity. So we do want to put some numbers together for the council, and we'll be bringing that back to you to give you a cost of what that would be. Now, I'm not arguing we should put the bridges and the walkway and benches in at this time, but at a minimum, looking at how do we just add some grass to the area and beautify
Yeah,
it.
some grass, really good-looking trees that are gonna not fall over on the fence lines,
Right.
that are not trash trees,
But just a medium-sized tree, we're not looking for a large tree, just a medium-sized. So Bruce, we have great arborists here that, including Mackenzie, that can make some recommendations on what we can do. So a lot of this can be done in-house, and that's what we're looking to do. And we'll bring a plan before the council for consideration.
And that, of course, will take into consideration any realignment or additional lanes for I-15.
Correct. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. There's that potential of losing 60 feet with the shifting of the frontage road. Unfortunately, you'll see a shift, and roads will get closer to your homes in the future when I-15 is
and
widened.
that makes it more concerning.
Right, so recognizing the 60 feet will come into about middle of the pond area. So there's that potential, the frontage road comes even closer. So there's some intent of making sure along the fence line that we do beautify or take care of some, again, kind of what we've done with all the other swell areas, just having some beautification in that area. But I don't see us making a huge investment on that 60 feet right next to frontage road, just because it's.
Well, is there any way to get the water running so that it's not just stagnant and mosquito infested?
I don't want to get too much into a conversation, so it's an agenda item,
Okay,
but yeah, so Mike has already turned out, our Public Works Director has already diverted some water back to the pond area as requested, so that's already happened.
okay.
So what we faced, Drew, is that we're glad you came, and I'm glad that I had this discussion with Brent last week, and this was going
Appreciate
to be
him
on
coming out and
comments.
talking to
A lot of times we'll take your name, number, information, and get back to you, because we do have to post things,
Yes.
to the public, so they know that what we're talking about. But
Okay.
But as you can see, we are aware of it and concerned
Mm-hmm.
about it. If you do want to, leave us your information, then
Yes.
we can bring that up.
Just want
if
you to be
wanna-
aware that we are unified in the respect that we want to see something done and be part of that.
So we'll make sure you're informed when that council meeting is brought up with the initial proposal for the
Okay.
concept.
Okay,
Just keep in mind that the wheels of government, we do have a number of projects. We are working on it, but I can't promise it'll be done next week or, next month, but we are working on
I
it.
hope to see some budget
Correct.
towards that. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for coming. We wish more people would get involved and let us know what's going on, so, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, let's continue to open session. Any other comments from, is there anybody chiming in on Zoom? So if there's nobody else from Zoom and nobody else here gathered in person, then we will close the open session and we'll move on to item E, the business of our meeting. The first couple items on our business tonight we're excited about. We have an appointment of a city recorder and taking the oath of office. And this is resolution number 2021-23, appointing Jennifer Hansen as our city recorder for the city and conduct the oath of office. So, we ready just to proceed with the oath?
Well, I guess we'd have to approve the resolution.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. Yes. We do have the resolution. So let's look at approval of the resolution so we can do that. This is resolution 2021-23.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-23, appointing Jennifer Hansen as a city recorder.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? appears unanimous. So let's do the swearing in.
Mayor, we're just going to have him do it right here in the well of the area?
Yep,
Just right in front of the
come on down.
You will raise your right arm to swear and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm. I do solemnly swear or affirm. That I will support, obey, and defend. That I will support, obey, and defend. The Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of this state. And the Constitution of this state. And that I will discharge. And that I will discharge the duties of my office. The duties of my office with fidelity.
Right back to work.
Well, congratulations, Jennifer. It's official now. So, thank you. And thank you, Mackenzie, for being here to do that oath of office. The second item is the appointment of a new finance director and the oath of office as well, too. This is Resolution 2021-24 that we're looking for a motion from the council.
I would motion that we approve Resolution 2021-24. Nate, tell me your last name, I always get it wrong. Lazier, thank you, as the finance director for Centerville City.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that appears unanimous. And Nate, come on up. And Jennifer Hanson, our just sworn in recorder, will administer the oath of office.
And notary. She passed her notary.
And notary.
Stan hasn't come yet, but I did pass the test. Okay, Nate, please raise your right hand to the square and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm.
I do solemnly swear or affirm
That I will support, obey, and defend.
that I will support, obey, and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of this state.
and the Constitution of this state,
That I will discharge the duties of my office
that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you. Thanks, Nate. And thanks for bringing your family. If it was the Boy Scouts, we'd say, hey, give your mom a kiss, give your wife a hug. So we're thrilled to have you both. Now it's, you were working before and now it's all official. So now we can get you to work even harder, right? So we're excited. All right, let's move on to the item number 3. This is the public hearing. This is a public hearing item, fiscal year 2021 budget amendment. See ya, thanks for coming. Jake, are you going to talk to us about this?
Amendment. Yeah, first attachment there. Okay, a few amendments. Fortunately, most of them are good news amendments. We've had an increase in revenue. You can see here that we're asking to increase the sales tax general. To date, we've actually received just over 4.4 million. We're proposing to amend the budget to 4.57 million. Just so you know, historically, for the month of June, when we receive our last month's worth of sales tax, is generally in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. So we will exceed that 4.57 quite easily. We'd have to have a really, really bad month to not reach that number. In addition, there's some that are being raised to the actual amount, $61,500 for business licenses. So that's up. Building fees, it's right at about $174,000 right now. I'm pretty sure we'll hit 175 or more by the end of this year. And then that transfer from other funds is because of the impact of RAP tax. We're expecting more in RAP tax as well. And so there's that $2,000 that gets transferred from the RAP tax fund for the Whitaker home. And so that accounts for that income. And you'll see the expense later on for that. So now if we scroll down, the proposed expenses, here, capital equipment, police had an opportunity actually this last week to go ahead and purchase an F-150 at this year's rates. And it's proposed that we go ahead and move forward with that as quickly as possible. And in lieu, we're taking out that vehicle from the FY22 budget. So they're going to purchase it right now instead of next year. And that's kind of the case with a lot of the vehicles. We're getting this year's pricing at this time. We're being asked, we're getting pressure to go ahead and purchase those, or at least commit to those vehicles right away, so we can get that. And also because there's a scarcity in the number of vehicles that are available. The delivery times, we're a little worried about this next year. So just a heads up on that. If we move on down, emergency and emergency management, these are actual numbers for the windstorm cleanup and windstorm repairs. We have the expense now. We will receive the reimbursement for this out of FEMA, out of our insurance, unfortunately next fall. So we'll account for the expense now. We'll receive the offsetting revenue next year.
You said unfortunately it was what?
Unfortunately, we won't receive the FEMA
Oh.
money as well as our
By
insurance
the end of June, you're saying?
reimbursement. Yeah, so it'll
So
be,
you're
it'll be
setting
next
that up?
fall.
Are you setting that up as a receivable?
Yeah, that will be a receivable, yes. Next one down, animal control. This was a mid-year increase. If you remember, it was more than expected for this, so we need to amend the budget for that. Engineering, we have been using ESI quite a bit more. They've had a lot more workload. There's a lot of reasons behind that. If we could talk about that more if you want to, but we need to increase that budget as well. And then utilities, Weber Basin, again, it was another increase, much more than we had anticipated, so we need to account for that change here in this amendment here. Let's see, what's the next one? Oh, capital projects, the niche wall. And also, we have the funding, so instead of doing it in FY22, and it really needs to be done this year anyways, was the playground resurfacing. So that accounts for that increase there in the park, in the park fund. I mean, not the park fund, park department. Whitaker Building, this is that additional 2,000, that allocation from RAP tax. And then if you go to the transfers, this is what I was talking about before, is that transfer we do from the RDA of the increment to the general fund to the Utopia fund. So this makes up that difference. So that's that change there, an increase of $8,785 of general fund money. Now this next one is in general terms. This is a transfer to Fund 47, which is our capital improvement. And the idea is to have a policy here where if the fund balance, which is 20% or more of the operating budget, that remainder, that amount be transferred to this capital, this Fund 47.
Let me interject real quick.
Yeah,
if
go for
I
it.
could. So that's administrative number for now, but that's definitely a policy decision that this council can decide what that percentage is. And historically, I've used 20% because 25%, anything above 25% is a problem, and we can get audited and get a finding for anything above 25. So like, the intent is to give ourselves a little bit of a buffer of 5% and wiggle room, because revenues do come in, as Jake had mentioned, at the end of the year that were unanticipated. And I've actually had a finding in the past with a city because we actually had more revenue come in last month, and so 20% is kind of where I like to keep it because of that issue. But if council wants it at 15 or to keep it at 25, there are options, and we can discuss that. And Nate, that's one of Nate's projects, is developing that policy so it's adopted by council officially. Any concerns or administrative? I mean, right now we could make a change to that 20% if you so choose.
Okay, continuing on. So if we go down to the next fund, RAP tax, anticipating more revenue here. And this is a combination of what we've actually received. And in the future, we may amend this as well, depending on ARP funds, because any lost revenue we can plug in here. And then, of course, the allocations, the 8555, they change because the revenue increases. So that's the amended numbers on the expense side. So if we go into parks, we are actually receiving quite a bit of park impact fees because of some of the development that's occurring. So we're increasing that amount, as well as the RAP tax. Again, there's that impact from the increase in RAP tax. And we also received the last payment of grant revenue this fiscal year rather than the last fiscal year, and we hadn't budgeted for that. So we're throwing that number in as well. And then on the expense side, we're just tapping that into our capital projects, which is kind of our general to-be-determined project number. If that's not used, that just goes into the fund balance of the park fund. And then we had a contribution to fund balance. We're moving that, it doesn't really make a difference, but we're moving that into that capital projects line with the additional revenue. So that'll move into fund balance anyway. Fund 47, that's what Brant was just talking about. I was talking about that policy. So this fund would be funded by whatever that amount is over that 20%, or whatever the number is that you decide. And you see the revenue, and then the expense is the contribution to that fund, Fund 47. Transportation, let me scroll down a little bit. Yeah, again, we're expecting more than we had budgeted, and we're just tacking that on to the capital project side, as well as use of fund balance, if you see that there. This is to pay for the projects that happened last summer, as well as those that we're anticipating for this summer. So we're looking at about, I think it's 1.8 million in projects.
Those are the road projects.
Yeah, between July 1 and June 30th, yeah.
Okay.
That's what covers that. So that would be mostly the 400 East project from last summer is covering that. And then this year, it's more of the slurry seal and the road surfacing projects. Utopia, this is that balancing the transfer from the RDA and the general fund, as well as the rebate. These are the actual numbers that are put in here. Water fund, and this is one of those things that we do on an annual basis. This use of fund balance of both the water and the drainage is to pay for the anticipated cost of the capital projects. We really don't know until we go out to bid and it comes back. So there's an increase of 225 on the drainage side. There's been some costs that have creeped in for the decant station. So those have added up, as well as the projects that were done. 400 East again being one of those main ones. And I believe that's it, right, Jennifer? There's nothing after that? Oh, well, we already talked about RDA at the last meeting. So that's the proposed budget amendments.
Quite a few there. A lot of them relating to sales tax, huh?
Yeah, any revenue increase and to balance the budget.
With some expense adjustments too. Questions for Jake before we go to a public hearing? Okay, this is a public hearing matter, so what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to the public to just discuss this matter. This is a public hearing on fiscal year 2021 budget amendments, which Jacob Smith has just gone over. We'll look for people that are in person and for those that may have a question online. For the benefit of those online, I am going to give it 30 seconds to a minute or so to make sure that the calling time we take effect for that. So the public hearing is now open for this matter. Any raised hands? For calls? So I will close the public hearing related to amendments to fiscal year 2021 budget. We will now come back to council if there's any further questions or discussion. If not, I'll look for a motion. This is resolution number 2021-17.
So Jake, with this engineer, do you think we will be without findings for budget exceptions this year?
Yeah, I do think so. Especially park fund. Park fund's healthy. So we have a couple $100,000 in there. Well, I should say 150,000 in the fund balance already. It looks like we're going to contribute another 150. That was the one last year, I believe, was the park fund, mainly related to the Island View construction.
Okay. I would make a motion that we approve the budget amendment as it has been presented.
Second.
A motion is second, further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on that then. Councilwoman Ivy,
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum,
Aye.
Councilman Ince,
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore,
Aye.
and Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
That resolution passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go to item number 4. This is also another public hearing item. This relates to the compensation schedule and justice court judge compensation. And it looks like, Jake, you're back at the microphone to fill us in on that.
Yeah, and Jennifer, if you could bring up Exhibit 8, the job value and compensation schedule. So each year, we're required to pass a resolution of the 2 items that we have here, one being the job value and compensation schedule, just mainly because we have some appointed positions on this list, and then as well as the judge's compensation is required by the administration of the courts. So we'll start with this job value and compensation schedule. I want to talk about a few of them that are highlighted. Those are the changes that are proposed. The first one there is the drainage utility supervisor. This was a position that we did have before. We changed it to the drainage utility or drainage maintenance. What was it?
Operator.
Utility operator. But in looking over the job description and what the supervisor actually does, they do supervise a program and they also are over a budget. So with the job description, this one fits what we originally had, the drainage utility supervisor. So it's restoring to it what it was. The next one is IT manager. It used to be IT lead / police records. We modified her job description actually a couple years ago, and so this is just reflecting what she actually does. She has been moved from the position has been moved from the police department into the administrative department, and so this reflects that. And there's no change to the job value on that one. It's the same. If we go down, this one, in the city, we have a few series. We have police officers 1 through master. We have our maintenance operators 1 through 3, and then a lead as well as a supervisor. So what this one is doing here is creating that for the parks department as well, because we do have a 1, 2, 3, then we go supervisor and director. What this does is it introduces that lead position like we have in the rest of the series.
And also, I want to also share that this is how it was at one point. Bruce is on, so he could share, but I believe it was about 10 years ago where we had this position, and we got away from this position, and now we're wanting to reintroduce this position. But honestly, I will share with the group, as I met with Bruce and had this conversation about this particular position, I looked at the org chart a little bit more, and I'll be honest, I'd like to reevaluate the organization itself there. Bruce has a number of responsibilities, and then Michael essentially is overseeing 9 different crews of 3 people during the summer, which I think that's quite a bit of responsibility to oversee that many crews. So it's got this weird org chart where Bruce has all these responsibilities over here, Mike's down over here, and it's really, there's got to be a more efficient way of directing staff, and I think they do a great job at it, but I think there's a way we can be a little bit more efficient. So over the next year, I'm going to be working with Bruce and evaluating how we can clean it up a little bit. I do feel like there might need to be an equivalent to Michael Higgins in the department to help share in some of those responsibilities and overseeing. But anyway, we'll present that to you sometime this year. But this would be the first step of providing some more or managerial type experience to staff in the Parks Department. Bruce, did I get everything? You can interject if you so choose.
Yeah, no, you're right on. And if we end up opening a second cemetery, after the vote in November, that'll affect it also, where it'll be much more needed to split up some of those responsibilities as we grow the cemetery into its own division.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay. Are these two separate public hearings? Should I stop there and we'll address the other resolution here in a moment?
It's a Lisa question I'll defer
Yeah,
to.
that is
on that
Lisa.
one.
This
We
one's an ordinance.
noticed these all together, all of the budget hearings and both the judge's compensation and the compensation schedule, so you can hold those as one.
Okay. All right, I'll go on to the next one then. Judges' compensation, just to let you know, the way this one works is the administration of the court requires that the judge receive an increase that's equal to the average increase of all of the employees of the city. And it looks like that this year that'll be about a 3.8% increase. So that will increase his wage to $53,592.98 per year. I think that's all I have.
Okay, no questions right now?
I have one, and it's more of a general question, and Lisa probably would point out it would have been better to ask the judge while he was here, but since we are discussing the judge's salary, can somebody help me understand why Centerville operates a justice court when not all communities in Davis County do that? What makes us special? Why do we need a justice court when we have neighbors who operate them as well?
We would be happy to schedule that as a future work session agenda item to discuss.
There you go.
That's a great almost
That is a
answer,
pretty
except for I'm
loaded
approving a
question.
salary for somebody, I'm asking what is the purpose?
Well, that is a discussion for a later time, unless you're talking about making a motion to.
I'm just asking as a general one, it's, if you go to pay for a bill, you want to make sure that you're paying the right one. So that's fine. If you want to punt to a different meeting, I would be really interested in rediscussing why we operate one.
It's a smart football move. Punting. There is a reason in the conversation we can have. Go ahead.
And did you say, I think I heard you say rediscussing, right? Because we do cover this regularly.
We do, and so some of it is it's just challenging our assumptions. Are we still believing that it's the right decision for our community to operate one? Does it meet the needs of the community?
Short answer, yes.
And from a
Yeah, and it might have been
standpoint-
just, it might have been just last, am I recalling correctly that it was just last year that we actually did a fairly deep dive? It was either last year or 2 years ago that we did
2 years
a
ago,
fairly deep.
because it was.
2 years ago that we did a fairly
Yeah.
deep dive into that question.
I remember that.
Oh,
conversation.
it should be an item you bet the over-under on, that I'm going to ask this question during budget season, because I do on a regular basis. So I'm just making sure we're the same.
Yeah, and from a financial
Well, and
standpoint,
it's a frustrating,
they do cover themselves. The service does cover itself.
But that's not the point in running one. It's not because it's
Financial
revenue neutral. It's, is it the right service to be providing?
I think it is.
Did you, Councilman Fillmore, do you have more?
well, I just understand that this part of the process is always frustrating because normally when we run a service and have staff that run that service, we get to dictate what they get paid. So I think the way this particular part of the budget process goes always stirs up those thoughts and feelings of why are we doing this?
I will share my experience in a previous city. I did reach out to AOC and had this conversation because I was fairly new to this and fairly new back to the state of Utah and how this operates. And we just went through a compensation study, and the average increase was 33% for our employees with the compensation study implementation. So that means the judge sees a 33% increase in his salary. And this is where I was truly struggling because according to our pay scale, this judge was already at the very top, and we're a very small justice court, and AOC says, it's just the way it is, and this is what you have to do. And I'm like, is there any argument? No, doesn't matter what his range is, doesn't matter. So I did experience that, and I've done a great deal of research into it, so I understand why you asked the question.
And Tammy hit on the point. It's like, in all other cases, we have control over, and when you don't, the only thing you're left with is the why question, right? Why? And so that's why I ask it. But I would love to have that readdressed.
So if there's other council members who would like to discuss this.
I think it would be
and like
great.
to add it to the agenda as a work session, we can do that. There is a request.
It's worth doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds great. Thank you.
All right, let's go to a public hearing on this. So this is a public hearing on the compensation schedule and justice court judge compensation as Jacob Smith has just presented to us. So we have the information up there on the screen for those that want to call in on this public hearing matter. And those that here at here City Hall could come up to the podium. So this public hearing is now open. Seeing nobody coming to the pulpit here, we gave it some extra time for those that might be calling in, and no calls or raised hands on Zoom. I will close the public hearing, and we can come back if there is any further discussion on it. If no further discussion, this is a resolution 2021-20. That I would look for a motion on.
Well, I would motion that we adopt ordinance 2021-07, updating and amending the Centerville job value and compensation schedule.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Sorry, there are two, isn't it? Thank you, Councilman. So the first one is ordinance 2021-07. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on that? Then let's do a roll call vote on that. Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
And Councilman Meekum. McEwen, sorry.
She can vote twice, it's fine. Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Then, now we need to the next one, the resolution in regards to the compensation of the municipal justice, the court judge.
Just so there's no hard feelings, I would motion that we adopt Resolution 2021-19, fixing the compensation for the municipal justice court judge.
2021-20, isn't it?
It shows 19 in the recommendation and 20 down below, which is I have to pull up the
Yeah,
actual.
I'm looking at the resolution.
Resolution is 20, so 2021-20.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I usually read off the top note.
Yeah, I get it. So we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second on that motion. Further discussion? Then let's go the opposite direction. Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilwoman McEwen. Just kidding. Twice. Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
That passes unanimously as well. Thank you.
I'll let you know when I want two votes. I'll pick the one I want to vote on twice.
I'm not in kicking distance.
All right, great, we get to move on. Ooh, we have another public hearing matter. Wow, this is such a record for public hearings. The next one is the fiscal year 2022 final budget. And we have A, B, C, D on this to discuss. So we got a bit of a discussion on this one. Jake, do you want to kick that off for us? Are you ready?
Yep, sure thing, and I'll have Nate come up here as well to help me out with this discussion. But I'll start off by introducing any changes from the tentative budget to this proposed final budget. So if you could pull that up for me there, Jaffer. So another Exhibit A. All right, so there hasn't been a whole lot of changes. One of the things that are in here is the proposed property tax increase. So if you look at the revenue, which I'll follow along here with you, Jennifer, tell you what page. It's going to be page 15. So you'll see under the Sorry, now I'm actually using your numbers up above. So just, yeah, type in 17. Okay, there you go. So property taxes, you'll see there, it's a rounded number, but it's about that 14.5% increase. We still don't know what the final property tax number would be. We're supposed to get that about the end of this week. So this is our guess, our best guess at this point, but it'll be close to this 1.7 million. So that's one increase that you see there. And also, just one small one, if you scroll down a little bit to the fines and forfeitures on that same page, under city court, this is due to the American Rescue Plan Act. We'll be able to restore some revenue there in a 4.1% increase. So that's what we're seeing there. So that will be a final number, is that 428,000. So slight increase, not much. Now, talking about the expense side, a few changes, of course, between the tentative and now. We refine numbers. We get better numbers on contracts, like final numbers on contracts, insurance, benefits and wages. There's been a few new hires since the last tentative and some promotions within police. So that adjusts some of the personnel numbers there. Some of the biggest increases, though, you'll see in fire. Let's see if we can find fire here. Page, according to that, is page 29. There we go. So you see an increase there from what, well, you don't show it there. Well, it was 1,017,971. It's been increased to 1,068,870, or about a $51,000 increase from what was in the tentative.
And also just want to note, again, the city manager report from 2 weeks ago, I do anticipate this assessment increasing over the next few years by 10 to 20%, unless there's, and the mayor can speak on this, unless there's a policy change at their level and commission level of how those property tax funds are used in terms of the operation.
Okay. The next large increases, and just so you know, these increases that I'm telling you about are mainly funded by that proposed increase in property taxes, almost 100%. We do have a balanced budget here, so it's just showing you what those increases are. In police, you've heard of this already, the switch over from Fat Pot to Motorola Flex. That's now budgeted in here on page 31. And Chief is here if you have any questions about that. If you scroll down, stop right there, you can see the Fat Pot line. We're now calling it police record software to keep it generic, but that's what it's referring to. You know, the proposed was 18,000. We're talking about $130,000 increase for the switch over and for that first year. So this is not going to be an ongoing cost. This 148,000, just keep that in mind. Next year it'll go down. In fact, in the final budget, I'd probably move that down into the capital equipment or the capital projects line to separate that out, make that easier to see. And then the other change here is the 4 vehicles. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the capital equipment. Talked about this before in the amendment to this year's budget. So we pulled the 1 vehicle out and we're paying for it this year, that F-150. So that's what you see here reflected is that decrease. And then in the parks budget, if we go to page, let's see, Fund 4510. So Jennifer, if you want to go to page 43. Bruce had, and it's not just Bruce, but all parks departments statewide had a very difficult time recruiting seasonal employees. So it's almost been required to increase the wages of those seasonal employees. So you see that increase here under the temporary and part-time wages. So we're increasing it from the 175 to the 230 for this next year.
And that equates into an hourly salary of what?
That went from $10 an hour to $12 an hour, which is comparable to our neighboring cities, what they are paying their temporary employees.
And
I just spoke to Bruce this morning. We're still 7 temporary employees short of what we normally have.
It's getting difficult to compete with In-N-Out and Chick-fil-A. They're paying more than we pay.
I
Okay.
will say, if I can interject, just to plug, I mean, we do have recurring seasonal employees that come back, which is phenomenal. They're on year 3 or year 4 of coming and helping with our parks, which is great and reduces the training time. But I think that does speak highly of the crew, and they love the work, so we're able to keep the same folks coming back.
All right,
Have
the
we
other,
considered, no, sorry.
all right, and then the next increase that we have is in RAP tax. And this is due to ARP funds, so that's just an increase. We don't need to show it here, but it's an increase in the revenue to backfill any lost revenue. And of course, that has an impact on the allocations between the Whitaker, what we pay to Centerpoint, as well as to the park fund. And you see those increases throughout the budget, wherever those are at. And same thing with the transportation fund. Again, we're anticipating using some ARP funds for some lost revenue there as well. That's allowed. So that just increases the amount that we have available for that annual project. That's what it does there. And then in the enterprise funds, again, there's some changes in there, but that's mainly because of the changes that we've made here in the general fund and the charges to the enterprise fund for general fund services. And those are all based on formulas. So that's where you would see the other changes. So that was actually simpler and easier than the amendments. That's all I have for changes. So I think before we go into discussion, Nate's done quite a bit of research on the process for truth and taxation. So I'll kind of talk about timing.
Yeah, so with truth and taxation, we have a little bit of timing differences than what would be a normal year. As Jacob mentioned earlier, the county's deadline to get us our tax rate for the upcoming year is June 8th. So the 1.7 million that we saw in the budget is an educated estimate. We won't have that final number until next week. And then we're looking at August for the public hearing and for the truth and taxation. So for now, all we can do is adopt a tentative budget that will carry us into the next year. The option that you have is to adopt it as is now, or if you would like a more fine-tuned property tax number, that would be the 14.5%. It'll have to wait for a future meeting. So anyway, is that clear for everybody?
So you're saying we'd adopt it with nothing?
With the guess.
Well, we would adopt, if you adopted it tonight, it would be with the estimate of 1.7 million. And then once we hold the truth and taxation hearing in August, that will finalize that number. And then in August, you'll adopt the final budget.
We're adopting it with an estimate?
You're adopting a tentative budget with an estimate.
If you delay it, Councilmember Ince, until the next meeting, as we generally do, they'll have the clear numbers by our next meeting in 2 weeks, and you could adopt the tentative budget at that meeting with the clear numbers, the concrete numbers, but it's still a tentative budget until we have the truth and taxation. So, again, continue doing what you're doing, just delay till the next meeting, and we'll have more firm numbers by then.
So you answered my question, Brad. That'll be because the county with the June 8th deadline will get us some firmer numbers, right?
Yeah, they'll give us our firm tax rate without the increase, and then we will apply that 14.5% increase, which will give us our final number.
So we don't have a legal obligation to adopt any budget tonight?
No.
Yes, sir. Just by the end of the
Before
fiscal
the end
year.
of June, we need to adopt a tentative budget. Whether that's tonight or next meeting is up to you.
So in theory, we could just table this.
As you normally do, yes.
I would propose that we table it until the next meeting.
Second?
I think there's public
Yeah,
hearings involved in
public
this, and
Yeah, there's a public hearing. If anybody wants.
Yeah, I do the public, the public hearings.
I know you're
first,
trying to
though,
be
right?
out of here in under an hour, but.
No, it's,
that was
the
pretty
public
quick.
hearing is going to be.
They
more-
missed it.
It'll be better when there's an actual number, but yeah, we could still hold the public hearing and then still table it and keep the public hearing open, I guess.
Well, if we hear any comments from the public hearing, we could still add that to, or make those changes if there's requests from this council to the, in 2 weeks from now, we can make those changes.
And with those numbers, the zeroed in actual property tax rate, if we leave the public hearing open, how soon can we post those up on, for the public to consume that and have their comments back to us? So if you're getting it on next week,
We could do it that day,
okay,
the day that we receive it.
Even posting the tentative budget still gives you a pretty good idea of what those numbers are going to be.
Yeah, it's
whether-
only gonna fluctuate by maybe $40,000-$50,000 at the most.
So we have only $40,000 or $50,000.
I got him on record saying it's only going to fluctuate by 40 or 50,000.
But the tentative budget, I mean, that's, I think it gives enough of a case to have discussion.
It's a
from public.
budget minus one item.
Right, yeah.
So,
So can we put off the public hearing for 2 weeks as well, too, for tabling?
generally, we've done the public hearing today, and we've also had the public hearing. Because again, opening the public hearing now gives you that opening of the public hearing, which is what you're looking for as a council, right? And then we can make those changes and be applied to the next, to the budget in 2 weeks with a public hearing.
Right.
And Lisa popped on, so somebody's in trouble.
Yeah, it's my opinion that you have to have the public hearing tonight because that was the notice that we gave the public when we accepted the budget in May.
All
So
right.
you have to hold the hearing today and then you can table it or close it.
All right, we will do the public hearing now then, unless there's further discussion before I go to it. Okay, so we're now doing a public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 budget. That public hearing is now open, once again, by members of the public or anyone that's here or listening in as well too. You can dial in or raise your hand on Zoom.
So Bill, when they do the edit on YouTube, we'll just put our original motion right at the end of this and it will look the same.
We give enough time? No responses either by phone or in person, so we'll close the public hearing, and let's go back to our discussion of this, unless we're ready. Was there other things we need to discuss before we look for, to table this?
Well, one other thing, talking about truth and taxation, it's recommended, you could do it this meeting or the next meeting, that you set the date and time for the truth and taxation hearing, as well as the adoption of the final budget. And per law, we're supposed to do that on a night where we don't have any other business items. So we're recommending August 10th, which is the second Tuesday in August. So just keep that in mind. So either this meeting or the next.
I just want to clarify, had a conversation with Lisa. What if it conflicts with another public hearing of truth and taxation in the county? Is that, for example, South Davis Fire had their truth and taxation?
That's where it's kind of nice to find out sooner than later, because we do coordinate that with the
Okay.
county.
So if we selected August 10th,
Right.
and Lisa popped on.
Yes, I believe that we have to have it a separate night. So I don't know if anybody has contacted the county yet, but usually we try to coordinate with the county. But why don't we, I mean, you can either set that tonight and then we'll have to change it. Or you can set it next week and we'll talk to the county in the next 2 weeks.
Just for information, I did talk to the county informally, because they don't have the current tax rate. Since they haven't released that yet, we aren't allowed to notify them formally that we're having a truth and taxation. So they are aware, but there wasn't any discussion of other taxing entities because they don't have to tell us yet.
So you just put us in a recursive loop. I can't actually notice the meeting if it's not official, right?
Yeah, it's a.
And just as an FYI, right now, I'm going to be out of town that day.
As an FYI, that is not a great day for me either.
The 10th.
Well, since we can't
Me neither.
officially do it because it's not official, right?
No, we can't.
So it's,
But just to put that information out there when we are trying to find a date, yeah.
Then we'll see if we can do some research, and then we'll recommend a date at the next meeting, unofficially. Next week, I should have more information. Sounds good.
Thanks, Nate.
Okay, so, because we're in that loop, we will not set the date for that, at this time. Any further questions for Jake or Nate on this before I look for a motion? Okay. Want to do your motion?
I was waiting for Bill, so he'd make it sound the same. The tabling motion.
I recommend that we table this until the next meeting.
Second.
We have a motion to table and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll look for those, thank you, Jake and Nate, we'll look for those numbers. Okay, let's go to item number 6. This is a public hearing on the zoning map amendment for the Randall property. I take it to McKinsey, you got that for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Wilkinson and members of the council. So this item was sent forward from the Planning Commission. It is the rezone of the Randall property just to our north at 285 North 100 East. The recommendation is to rezone it from a residential medium zone to a public facilities medium zone so that we can use it in pleasure park planning, city hall planning uses. The Planning Commission approved it or recommended it for approval 5-0, 2 members were absent, and staff recommends this rezone as well.
So just point of information, I guess that all our city property is zoned that way, whether it be a park or a city building or whatever, is that correct?
We do have some public facility high, which I think is the Public Works building is a public facility high zone, but everything else is public facilities medium.
Great. Yeah, it was fun to get to know, but maybe you guys already all knew that. But, so.
Probably heard it, but didn't remember.
So, any further questions from McKinsey?
Okay, thank you. This item is a public hearing, so I'll stay here until then.
Yes, it is a public hearing. So let's go there. This is as just discussed by McKinsey for Planning Department. This is a public hearing matter, a zoning map amendment, the Randall property just northeast of City Hall here. So that public hearing is now open.
While we're waiting on the public, did we do the tie-in and the irrigation? Is that work already underway, or is that?
Bruce and I haven't. Bruce, are you still on there? Is he still on there? He was on there a minute ago. Bruce, can you address that question?
Yes, so only irrigation lines were just capped, so we still have our point of connection for the property, and we also have the ability to run valves and things off of the park's irrigation lines, which will probably do a loop, which gives us a little bit better pressure, uniform pressure.
Great. Thanks for the clarification.
Seeing no responses on the public hearing, then I will close the public hearing on this zoning map amendment to the Randall property. Come back to if there's any further questions from council.
I would motion that we approve ordinance 2021-05, amending the zoning map.
I just have one question. Do we have an idea of when this is going to be done, the Randall property?
I'm going to defer to Bruce on timing. I know one of our big issues is trying to bring in enough fill to start leveling it out, and I don't know where Bruce is on trying to acquire the dirt.
Yeah, we don't have a master plan for it, and so we don't know where, we don't have irrigation, we don't plan, we don't have anything other than a grading plan that I've recommended. So that's what we'll work on is grading, and then we'll bring to the council. I think we have it scheduled for a work session on funding, how we'll fund irrigation and.
We've already
and-
funded $30,000 to have that.
Bruce, yeah, there's already RDA funds that are paying for that. The
RDA.
master plan that you're referring to is the master
Master.
plan for the entire area, but it was agreed 2 weeks ago to proceed with the grass, irrigation, and trees.
I'm just wondering if you have any idea when you'll have the grass and the irrigation in.
Well, if we have the money to just buy the soil we need, we could speed that up. But if we're waiting to fill it with available from other projects, it could take a few months,
No, we've been trying to acquire
maybe a
some
year.
soil from other projects just to save on cost, but I think we've exhausted that. And so, yes, no, Bruce, we do just need to acquire the fill as soon as possible because it is a hazardous situation. So I say we proceed, and we'll have a conversation tomorrow about this.
Okay, yeah, yeah, we can work that direction if you'd like.
Right.
And both Bill and I were willing to donate our park strip grass. You know, we're letting it die, so it's free to a good home.
Yeah, there's even some grass in mine.
Yeah, mine won't die. It stayed green, but I haven't watered it, so.
For the leftover rocks they have, they could bring the rocks over here.
Have
to
those
this
too,
property.
yeah.
We've got plenty of rocks. We don't need any more rocks.
Yeah, that's a rocky piece of ground, isn't it?
Oh, it's almost straight rock.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
So we'll have a better timetable. Bruce and I will get together and we'll discuss our options and we'll share it either in a weekly update or at the next city council meeting.
All right, so we had a motion presented by Councilman McEwen. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second, motion and a second. A motion and a second to that motion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mackenzie. Lisa, did I do something wrong? Or are we good?
She's next.
No, I'm just ready for the next one.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so let's go to the next one. This is a public hearing on zoning code amendments, the newspaper noticing amendments. Now, Lisa, the only reason I said, because I didn't know if that was a roll call, I didn't think it was, so I was okay. But you're here for the newspaper noticing amendments.
Yes, and in the future on the zoning legislative changes, we do have to put it on the ordinance, but it was unanimous, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we have before you some staff recommended amendments to your zoning and subdivision ordinance. This is in response to legislative changes eliminating some of the newspaper noticing requirements. We brought to the council before some amendments to our municipal code, and these amendments to your zoning and subdivision ordinance were delayed because we had to take them to the Planning Commission for recommendation. So the Planning Commission has recommended approval of these amendments, and most of these amendments, let me see if I can share my screen. Here we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So most of these amendments, the Planning Commission recommended, whenever we say public hearing, that we also say public meeting. So you'll see a lot of those changes in here. And I just added in a few comments here. With some of the amendments in 2021, they weren't sure how they were where they were going to place in the Utah code, the Utah Public Notice website. So I just decided to eliminate references, the statutory reference to that, and that solved it. One thing that I did want to talk to the council about, though, there are two substantive changes here that actually are not required by state law. State law just requires notice of the first public hearing of any kind of zoning amendment, and that public hearing needs to be at the Planning Commission. And then we provide any subsequent notice. So it's just an ordinance requirement. It's not a statutory requirement. And the Planning Commission and staff are recommending that we change our noticing requirements for subsequent public hearings, which generally means a public hearing at the City Council, from 10 calendar days to 3. Because what happens is if you have a public hearing at the Planning Commission, in order to meet that 10-day notice, we miss the next city council meeting, and then there's a Planning Commission meeting, and then, so you're 4 weeks out. Even if it's, you know, an easy item, you're 4 weeks from the Planning Commission meeting. So if you are willing to change that to 3 days, you know, if the public was paying attention at the Planning Commission, then we notice it. And we're not saying that we will always get it on the next city council meeting, because it's a quick turnaround. It would be a 1-day staff report and getting it on Novus, but it allows us that opportunity rather than making the applicants wait for 4 weeks to get on the city council. And then similar to that, recommending changing this on-site notice. Again, this is only an ordinance requirement. It is not a statutory requirement. But my suggestion is that you change that on-site notice from 10 calendar days to 5, which means that planning staff just has to go put that on-site notice out the Friday before the Planning Commission meeting. So we're kind of trying to, you know, just make it easy to meet these noticing requirements. Again, not making the applicant, you know, miss a meeting because we say it has to be 10 calendar days.
But is that for the Planning Commission or for the City Council?
I believe this is on-site notice for the Planning Commission. It's zoning map amendments, conditional use permits, and conceptual site plans. Those are the only applications that require this on-site posting. So those are before the Planning
But
Commission.
the 10 days for the Planning Commission wouldn't slow things down if we did 10 days for the Planning Commission. Yes, no?
Yeah. Let's see, yeah, that's true. But it's a different notice. Staff has to actually go out and put these signs out. But we have heard feedback that people actually like this. This is one way that people say, oh, I saw that.
I would like it there
that's why
10
I
days
came.
if possible. I mean,
Yeah. So
if it's
that's-
10 days for the Planning Commission and 5 for the council, so you can turn it around, I'm okay with that, but I don't see a problem with the 10 days before the Planning Commission, because I think it takes sometimes, if, you know, you've got to drive by
a
it.
couple times before you stop and read
Yeah,
it.
or you don't drive by for 2 or 3 days, you know, and so you've missed it. I would definitely like it up 10 days before the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. And I think, like you said, it's not going to delay.
Yeah, that
because
shouldn't
it's
just delay anything, but it would give people more of a chance to know what's going on.
Okay, well, keep that in mind when you make your motion, perhaps to revise the on-site notice back to 10 days rather than 5. And these are just some statutory changes. I wanted to make sure that we have all kinds of notice, you know, any kind of notice that's in the state statute, I wanted to make reference to in our code, just to remind people that we need to provide those kinds of notices. And then you'll see, I just made very similar changes to our subdivision ordinance, although in the subdivision ordinance, I think we made some of these changes in our draft rewrite, but they weren't in our code yet. So I went ahead and there were more changes that were needed in our subdivision to bring it into compliance with our city code. And we're not recommending or any changes to the noticing requirements for subdivisions. It was just those 2 notice requirements for zoning. So with that, this is a public hearing agenda item, but staff is recommending approval of these amendments as presented.
Thank you, Lisa. Council, any questions for Lisa before I open the public hearing? Doesn't look like it, so we will go to a public hearing on zoning code amendments on the newspaper noticing amendments. That public hearing is now open. Seeing no response to that public hearing is now closed. Come back to see if there's any further questions of staff. If not, we'll look for a motion, keeping in mind what Lisa said, a little amendment to that ordinance with the 10 days. Anybody want to make
I move
it?
that we approve ordinance number 2021-10 with the modification on the on-site posting notice that it goes back to the 10 calendar days prior rather than the 5.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilwoman Ivy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum?
Aye.
Councilman Ince?
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore?
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Let's go to item number 8. This is the UDOT Outside Engineering Services Reimbursement Agreement. And Kevin will address that.
Okay, as you know, we've been working for a year and a half or two with the West Davis Corridor Design Build team. Actually, we've been working with the pre-design team, and now they have the design build contractor on board. What UDOT does is they expect the cities to kind of take some of the cost up front of reviewing plans. Randy and I have been in dozens of meetings with these folks over the past year and a half or so. But then once they hit construction phase, UDOT allows cities to be reimbursed for outside engineering services. So what this does is it allows my time, some of my staff's time, to be reimbursed 100% by UDOT instead of paid for by the city. They allow us to charge out a different rate. They allow a 2.5 times multiplier. So it is a higher rate that UDOT, it's a federal and UDOT rate that they allow. And so again, if a city came in and said, hey, we want to tackle this on our own with our own manpower and staff, they could do that at the city's own cost. But many cities are opting for the reimbursement so that these costs are absorbed by UDOT. So it's kind of one of those where, you know, the sooner we can get on UDOT's dime, the better. Mike and I just today spent quite a bit of time reviewing plans. A lot of them are drainage plans, some are utility relocation. And we've got about 1,500 feet of the frontage road, of course, that's getting realigned. And so that's what this contract is for. It's for that 1,500 feet of road realignment, culinary water realignment, and then there's half a dozen or so culverts that are crossing the frontage road that the city will own. And so that's basically what this work plan is for. The work could begin here in the next few months. It could last 6 months. It could last, well, the entire project is probably going to last 2 to 3 years, but we're not positive exactly when they're going to complete the Centerville portion of the work. So any questions?
I've got one. I looked at the scope of work, and it's pretty detailed. The one thing that seemed to be missing, and maybe that's because they expect the cities to do this, or UDOT is going to do it, where's the outreach activities to those residents who are going to be impacted with all of these changes? How is that being communicated and paid for? If we have residents who want to come and meet with the engineering team and say, okay, I have concerns, as we have in the past, how does that get accounted for and paid for?
Yeah, that's a good question. My understanding is that the design build team has a public involvement group. So we ought to reach out to them. I ought to get with Brent, and we ought to reach out to that public involvement group. Farmington Bay Constructors is the conglomerate. It's basically Ames, Staker Parson, and Wadsworth Brothers. That's Farmington Bay Constructors.
So we ought to reach out to them. I know that that's been brought up in meetings before, but I don't know that that's been accomplished, the public involvement or public outreach. They do have, it looks like they have some stakes out on site through the detention basin of Woods PO. I can find that out. That'll be a separate effort, but that's something that I can look into.
That would be great, because I look at this as the starter pistol. Once we agree to this agreement, everything is full steam ahead, and then I'm going to have residents calling me and asking me questions on a project plan. I can't give them the details, and so as much as we can communicate the where and whens and the hows, we're not going to make everyone happy. We already know that, but at least we can make them as aware as possible, as soon as possible. That would be just fantastic.
I do have an answer for you. I did ask this question to Travis College of who that is, and her name is Brianne Bigelow. She works for the Langdon Group, and I have, if you want it on the record, I can share the contact information, which is 801-886-9052, extension 8335. So that'll be the primary point of contact for any outreach, which is actually I had the conversation because of the resident who was concerned about the trees and all that. I reached out and asked if Brianne would, or if they could keep us involved in any social media posts that we could share and keep our residents informed. So he sent back, and Brianne was CC'd on this, so
Okay.
we do have that contact.
Well, like I said, I had no problem with the scope of work. I just saw that as a missing line item. So if there's any outreach stuff that we can actually put on the website that lists dates and plans or footprints or anything that, Kevin, you feel would be helpful to residents to see that we can publicly release, more information in this case isn't going to hurt us.
Yeah, it sounds like that's their public involvement group. That's the best point of contact, and anything that they post ought to be able to be forwarded to the city, that we could post on our website, or, but it is going to be a pretty high pressure. I think it's going to be coming right around the corner, because they've asked Mike and I to finish our preliminary review by tomorrow at midnight. And so they're going to be, they're going to be wanting to move some dirt, and it is going to be kind of a high pressure situation. So I think that's a great point about public involvement. They have a firm, the Langdon Group is I'm guessing working directly for the design build team.
Well, I'm thinking they should add a line item in here for all the questions you're going to get from council that we're not getting from the public involvement group. If they're going to, it's all federal money. If they're going to pay for that, I think they need to line that in there, because you're going to be spending some time with us, I'm sure. It's not in this schedule, so. But in principle, I don't have a problem with it as it's structured right now as a basic agreement.
I agree, and I think the faster you can get it done, the better off everybody will be.
It's amazing how many people still don't know about this.
Right.
And your residents right there, where the bridge is gonna go across on the frontage road, and I don't want to name any residents are aware of it, but how many people within Centerville still don't even know this is happening?
The calls, first, when we start getting the heavy gear up there to place that bridge, everyone's phone on the council is going to start ringing, because they're going to say, I didn't know about it. And I'm like, well.
And I think it's really important that they do have Brianne's contact information. I think we play the game of telephone, but that's not going to be effective. I think there's a level of, we do need the general idea of what's going on, so we answer basic questions, but we still need to point them in that direction, because they need to start compiling the FAQs and getting that information out to all.
Absolutely. I don't want to try and go beyond an FAQ, because I'm not qualified. I just
Right.
want to be able to say, here's the approximate dates. Kevin's group is, by statement of work, is not involved in this effort, so we don't throw them at Kevin, because he's not going to be able to answer them either, and then we just push them on to their public relations.
I think for our sake, though, Kevin, we still want to have, and we've discussed this, just making sure we have that communication. What you see as far as working with that, there's information, hey, they're going to start doing this. We don't need to wait for Brianne to let us know. But if you have information, let's get it out to the entire county.
I've actually already had some phone calls of people wanting to know, because they've started, I guess, building the bridge up there. And all of a sudden, I didn't know, I had to drive out there, and they're like, what are they doing? What's going on? What are they building out there? And I had to drive out. I thought we were getting something cool. No.
Well, we are, a bridge.
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Nope. I'm like, well, nothing that I know of. And so then I got out there and seen what it was. So I've actually had a few phone calls about it already.
Yeah, they've started to preload the soils for the structures. And so that is for the bridge structure.
Kevin, do you know at what point an address north the road is going to start to affect the residents? Like
Yes.
1700, 1600, 1400?
So it's approximately right in the middle of Summerhill subdivision, so a few hundred feet south of Abe Millett's home on the frontage road. So from there to Lund Lane is the 1,500 feet or so of the extent of the realignment.
Which
There-
would be about what north?
So Lexington Park is 2025 north, so you're about 2075 north, 2050 to 2075 north.
People before that won't see any change at all.
There are some culverts that they have south of there that we're fortunate that they have on the plan right now. We're hoping that they don't try to renegotiate those and take those out, but.
But they're not moving the road any closer to the people before that.
Correct, correct. The road realignment starts at, again, about the middle of Summerhill, the old DeVore piece.
Which means that's already anticipated.
Right.
in
Yes,
their
those property
plans.
takes have already been taken from, there's a little bit of a property take at Lexington
Is it
through our detention basin that they made, but their road realignment begins at Summerhill. They have taken some of that property and they've paid Symphony Homes for that property.
Kevin, I've added the map, if you want to walk it through real quick. So this is Lund Lane here. So the frontage road will be realigned here, right? And this is the new
Yes,
sidewalk.
from Lund Lane, I want to see if this is the latest alignment that the design build. Okay, so this is the one off of West Davis Corridor's website.
It is, I don't have the design build one.
So the design build one goes a few hundred feet south of Abe Millett's home. There is where they're starting to jog. The pre-design, this is the pre-design, and it may have gone all the way to Jennings Lane.
It did, it went clear down here before it
So it's not going
realigned.
as far as it used to.
It's not going as far. The design build contractor, in order to save money, they wanted to shorten the lengths of the bridges. Those are some of their major costs. So they've shortened the length on that flyover.
So it'll be a shorter radius essentially to realign it with.
Yes, and I can get you a link from the design build contractor of the
That'd be great.
new alignment.
Who is the design build contractor? I don't even know that.
So it's a conglomerate of Ames, Staker,
That's what you're saying earlier.
and Wadsworth Brothers. They're called Farmington Bay Constructors.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Sounds very Douglas,
the last few months, Kevin,
sounds very Douglas Adams.
this is the entrance to the bridge coming off our frontage road, right? That
So
we're
this
looking at, the
bridge-
bridge that's going across?
This bridge, you'll be traveling northbound on I-15, and you'll be able to get off and fly over and go down
Okay,
onto West Davis Corridor. The same bridges you'll be able to get on and off at Legacy and on and off at I-15, so.
okay, good.
But that's
From
the-
a standpoint, it's not dumping any traffic onto the frontage road then? It's
No,
just
the
coming
frontage road is
directly off
just
the
getting
freeway.
realigned. It's
Yeah.
not getting an on or off or any connection changes.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the UDOT outside engineering services reimbursement agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on it then. Councilwoman Ivy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum?
Aye.
Councilman Ince?
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore?
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0.
I need to bow out early. It looks like what's remaining on the agenda, you guys will be able to handle just fine without me, so.
Well,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Councilwoman Fillmore, for joining us. Have a good night. All right, let's go to item number 9. This is city standards and specifications and detailed drawings. Kevin, you want to, since you're up there, you want to talk about it as well?
Yeah, basically, this is a reiteration of city standard detailed drawings and specifications, a very exciting topic. But what we do is we try to stay up with UDOT's specifications in many instances, as well as American Public Works Association. And then we modify those to meet our city. So I think we had a new city, the first set was in 1991 that was put out, and we've re-upped them every 10 years or so to try to keep up. So it's just kind of that time to try to bring them up to new standard. We've also added details that have been requested along the way. So there are just a lot of details of city infrastructure, everything from street lights to pedestrian ramps. So there's the 20-some-odd sheets of details, and then there's the 600-odd sheets of specifications that we're recommending be updated.
So Kevin, I pride myself on reading entire packets. I will admit, I passed out on this one twice.
Yeah.
The only question I have for you is on these detailed, the standards and specifications, the 663 pages, the authorship on that, do we own that or do we license that? How do we, the actual content, how do we have copyright or ownership over that?
You know, most of it is copy and paste from APWA. We put the Centerville City footer on there, so, and we have had to revise a lot of those, so it's Centerville City owned. They're kind of industry standards that are shared through the cities and through, but they originate from American Public Works Association.
Okay, I was just curious because with that amount of authorship, I was like, oh, I don't want to get sued by somebody who says, hey, we own 90% of this content and you have to relicense it. As long as we own it outright, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and we're members of APWA, and so if you're a member, you can get on their website and download and.
The city's members or your engineering firm is members and we get it as an extension of contracting with your firm?
Both.
Both cities
Okay.
member as well.
Lisa doesn't have any issues with authorship?
We're in government, it's R&D, rob and duplicate.
Well, except
I'm
for
kidding.
until somebody says that's licensed
These
content.
types of situations, in these types of situations, APWA is in
The
standard.
R&D, I'm gonna remember that.
I'm fine, as long as everyone else is fine with it. I hate adopting a bunch of text
Yeah.
and then
I think
having
it's a fair
somebody say
question.
that's mine.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair question.
That's pretty good.
But I did finish it, so.
You only fell asleep twice?
It's interesting content. It's not the engineering I do, but it was interesting to read it, so.
Yeah.
And I will say, I mean, ours is very similar to other cities we work for. That's how industry standard it is. So you read it once, you're good to go. You know exactly what Farmington's doing now.
Minor concern. It was just like,
There are some tweaks that.
it was the question when I looked at it, I was like, this can't all be original authorship, because this would be really expensive for this amount of documentation. So I was just curious, since we hadn't seen it before, what the origin story was and how clean the R&D was on it.
Yeah, we pick and choose. We pull out some specs that don't apply. So it is changed and modified a little bit, but, yeah, the verbiage all comes from APWA.
And then we freely share our modifications with any city who wants them. They can come and get them from us, right?
Or APWA if they're members.
All right, fair enough.
I think a PDF, we would share a PDF with other groups.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so what we have is, unless there are further questions for Kevin, is adopting resolution 2021-09.
I would recommend that we approve resolution 2021-09, amending the city standards and specifications, including detailed drawings.
Second that.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on it? Let's Do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Ivy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum?
Aye.
Councilman Ince?
Aye.
Councilman McEwen?
Aye.
That motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Kevin, for all that you shared on both of those agenda items. Let's go to item number 10. This is a shared agency agreement and end-user license agreement for Motorola Flex Software Police Department. Chief, you want to talk to us about that?
Sure, thank you. So this has to do with our records management system, which is a critical component of our operation. We started using a program called FAPOT in 2005. This was a records management system that we actually were involved with as a police department to develop. It was a local company here, started the company, FAPOT, and working with several agencies in the areas of Davis County, we worked together to develop this records management system. And it's worked quite well. We saved a lot of money in doing it. During this time, kind of the other major actor in the city of Utah for records management was a company called Spillman, which was also kind of local grown up in Logan area. And that was also developing while we were developing with FAPOT. FAPOT has since been sold twice, and now it is owned by Central Square. It's considered kind of a legacy program. And agencies are dropping FAPOT. It's not being supported anymore, per se. It's kind of a background program now in a much larger company that doesn't, it's a very small interest in keeping that going. So with that development, it's become very clear that we're in a position where we need to make a change and go to a different records management system. And coincidentally, at the same time, there has been this change where Spillman was purchased by Motorola. Motorola, as you know, has been a giant in the communication sphere, especially with public safety, radios, mainly communication-wise. They've also branched out to where, in fact, now our body cameras, this WatchGuard camera that we carry, our dash cameras are owned by Motorola. They purchased those, and they've gotten into records management system as well, which kind of does make sense because all of these things work together. When we have a file of a traffic stop that's generated on a dash cam and a body camera system, those all integrate very nicely into storage, into our RMS system. And the computer-aided dispatches around here, those are all moving to this Motorola Flex program. So essentially what's going on now county-wide and in other areas, virtually every agency in the county is moving to their records management system. If they're not already on the system, they're moving to Motorola Flex. So the writing is very clear on the wall to us that this is something that we have to kind of join in with, and it's become advantageous for us because it's also in best interest of Motorola to make the best deal that they can so that everybody is on the same program and it helps everyone else. So what this is there will be one file server at a hardened location within the county that we will all work on, all of the agencies in the county, including the sheriff's office, and then an off-site hardened location outside of the county for some redundancy and resiliency. So the thing that will make this beneficial for us, the price has been reduced significantly. They've done a $17,257 discount. If we had purchased into Spillman probably 2 years ago, we would be paying well over what they're asking for now. So it's actually a really good time for us to enter into this agreement. Since all the agencies in the county will be using the same program, it allows more interoperability with our investigators, with our patrol, with the jail. So in other words, currently when we make an arrest, we're on kind of a standalone system. Then when we go to the jail, we have to re-input all the information on that arrestee. It takes more time and effort for our officer to drop off someone at the jail. Whereas it'll all be on one system now. When we deliver a person at the jail, they've already got all of the information that we've generated so far on that, so it can speed things up. There's many aspects of this program that is very is going to increase our effectiveness and give us a lot more data that we can draw from. So there's a lot of benefits to it. It's not perfect, but it's going to be a definite increase for our capability. The maintenance fees on this will be less than what we're paying for Fat Pot. We're right now around $18,000 a year for Fat Pot. Those will go down to $11,770, and that's the second year. So it'll take about a year for this to go live. They'll be working, if we sign the contract before the end of this month, then they will start working on integrating the system with us and getting us online, and it'll take about a year for that to happen. So we'll still be using Fat Pot throughout the coming year exclusively, but at the same time, getting on board with Motorola Flex. And once that goes live, then it starts the first year of use, and that'll be maintenance free. So the price that's included here is that first year maintenance, so that we won't have to pay that $11,000 until on into the second year. We'll still need to be using Fat Pot, but once we go live, we can dial back on that. We still need to have access to those records, so we're gonna have to dial back on that. However, with the experience from other agencies around, they were able to negotiate a drastically lower fee, because we're just using it for like detectives and records access, grammar requests and things like that. We're not actively using it. So I don't foresee any problems there. So what the estimate or what the quote is for the pricing, the flex pricing, is $147,131.37. And that gets us set up on the system. It gives us all the licensing we need. That's a one-time cost. And then going forward, the maintenance fee is $11,770.91. We've been in several meetings with Motorola. They've gone through and showed us the entire program and how it works, how it functions. We've had meetings with them talking about security and the system itself. There's been meetings within the county looking at it, and the consensus is that this is something that we should do. I should say that as of now, it's my understanding that every other agency, and that includes fire, is also going to these same programs, has either signed the contract or have received authorization to sign the contract. So we're kind of the last one to make that step. So it's my recommendation that we, as a council, that you approve this proposal and approve the contract. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
And that is part of the current budget plan.
Yes, so the amended budget that you heard earlier was $148,000, I think it was. That was paying for Fat Pot, the $18,000 for Fat Pot, plus this $129,000. The way that their pricing is that it's 50% upon, so July 1st would be 50% would be due, and then when it goes live, the rest of would be due at that point.
I was in one of those meetings all set up to let me just kick the tires and ask them all my IT questions, and they brought the right people to the table. There was no hesitation. They had the answers. They were the correct answers that I was expecting. So I was very satisfied that they've thought it through. So I'm not worried about security or architecture, design, and integration. I can't speak to how important that is with government agencies. I struggle with that every day with systems that are not integrated. So just the savings alone through integration, like the example you just gave about the jail, is a perfect example of how that's going to help. So I don't see anything negative about this. I just wish we could get it sooner.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I appreciate you attending that meeting. That was very helpful, because I'm not an IT guy.
Yep, I'm a rent nerd. You can always borrow one when you
Yeah,
need one.
for sure. Thank you.
I presume Lisa is happy with the contract?
I have reviewed the contract. As I've said before, it's usually a little one-sided on these software program contracts, but I did discuss the termination clause because it didn't appear that there was one. And so this is an interesting setup where we're basically piggybacking on Layton City's agreement, and there is a 60-day termination clause. So I'm happy with that. If we're not happy, we can get out. But we're putting all our eggs in this basket, so.
I'd say good luck in finding an RMS in 60 days to replace it. So
Yeah,
it'd take a while to exit this contract.
yeah, for sure.
What does FATPOT stand for?
For all the people of the world. It was developed by, oh boy, I can't think of his name right now. He worked for Layton Police Department. They were using the same RMS system we were. It was called CRIS at the time. And CRIS, same thing happened with them. They stopped supporting it. There was a need to get another system out there, and he, pretty smart guy, he started putting it together and then quit Layton PD or Layton City. He worked for Layton City and started his own company, and then reached out to all the agencies in the county, and we started working together and collaborating and coming up. We just told them this is what we need, this is what we want, this is how we want you to build it. It was a lot of hiccups along the way and frustration, but we came out with a pretty decent program, but it's been sold and resold and no longer supported.
I would make a motion that we approve signing of the shared agency agreement and end user license. Motorola Flex.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilman Ince?
Aye.
Councilman McEwen?
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy?
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum?
Aye.
That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. All right, let's go to item number 11. This is the municipal code amendment on glass recycling. Lisa?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We have another ordinance amendment item, and this is in response to a request from the council to bring back amendments to our city code that would allow for glass recycling in the city. So staff has prepared those. Let's see if I can bring that up for you. So we've prepared these amendments to just change a couple of the definitions as suggested by Momentum Recycling, but basically we have to change the definition of garbage. And then I also added another sentence under recyclable. So excluding glass from the definition of garbage when we say so, and adding it as a recyclable when we determine. And then also allowing the city under the definition of approved recycling containers, that those for glass will be approved by the city. And then finally, just saying that the city can separately contract for glass recycling services. I think our code already allows this. I just wanted to make it clear. I also reviewed the ACE solid waste contract, and it did not appear to be an exclusive contract for garbage services. And ACE has also provided a letter saying they support this glass recycling. So with these minor edits, you should be able to enter into a contract for glass recycling within the city. And so staff is recommending approval of ordinance 2021-15.
George, you and I were both very much in favor of this. Do you want to do this one, or you want me to?
Sure, I'll go for it. I would motion that we approve ordinance 2021-15 for glass recycling.
Second.
Motion and a second, further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Councilman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously. Let's go to item number 12. This is glass collection and recycling agreement with Momentum Recycling LLC. If you recall, last time they came and presented on this. And so I guess now we have the product of that. Any further talk on this? Jake, your name's on this. Anything further on this than what we discussed before?
Lisa's worked on this one as well.
I didn't see her pop back on the screen though, so I thought
She briefly mentioned in her last statement, so I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
she did.
Well, just maybe to remind public that might be listening in on this, this is a program that's offered through Momentum Recycling. It's completely through Momentum. The city's just authorizing them to operate within the city. So Momentum will be doing the signups, they'll be providing the carts, they'll be doing the pickups,
Customer service.
and they'll be fielding any other questions. So we'll have their phone number. Anybody calls us, we will just refer them to them.
We'll include them as part of our new residents signups.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that they are aware that glass recycling is available, and here's who you call.
I haven't seen the latest utility mailer. Did we get into it?
No, because we needed this to be approved prior to that.
So it'll go out with June's?
We'll go out with the next one. In fact, we'll probably include it in social media, just make people aware of the link and where they can go to sign up.
Yeah, I don't want to go through the effort if we can't make them be successful. So
Absolutely.
I would like to make sure that we've got plenty of buzz around it. I know they said they didn't need much to be cost effective in a city, but
No, we want it to be successful. I think it's important that we heard from him how important glass recycling is. We're going to be out of that commodity in 25 years. I don't know how true that is. We've heard fossil fuels be gone years ago, but.
I just would like the number that they give us annually be number of tons of recycled glass, not hundreds of pounds or something. I mean, let's be substantial in it, so.
That's true.
I was very excited about it, and I still am. There's been a lot of people that would like glass recycling, so I'm really glad to offer it to our residents. Talking to a few of them, it's been interesting. I was challenged to see how much glass I use, and I was surprised at the lack of glass that I use now. I was all excited, and I'm gung-ho out there going, we're gonna recycle, and they're like, okay. You go home for a week and you save all your glass and see how much you get. I don't really use any glass. So that was interesting to me. I would have thought I would have had more glass than that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how well it goes, because I think it's great that we can do it, but it's surprising what little glass we use in our lives now.
I still think, like we talked about last time, that we may end up with a couple key central distribution or collection points in city, because we had the same discussion. Neighbors were like, that's great. And then we explained it was a once a month pickup. So I'm not even sure if 2 or 3 of us would fill one of those in a month. And so that's my only hesitation is will we just die because there's not enough people who are willing to share their can with their neighbors or otherwise. But I still think we'd probably be successful with a central spot, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Like I said, I was shocked at the little bit of, I think there are people with maybe a little bit different lifestyle that maybe will have more glass bottles than I have.
if they put Coke back in the glass bottles for the same price, I'd have a lot more glass.
Yeah, yep, that's kind of where, yeah, like I said, I was just surprised at how little in glass, what comes in glass just doesn't come in glass anymore.
Well, I would motion that we approve the glass collection and recycling agreement with Momentum Recycling LLC.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we have a start date? Didn't they tell us it was 60 days or something after we approved it?
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was very long for them to get going.
Start saving your glass. Take you that long to get very much.
I've already got it worked out with the people in the cul-de-sac, 4 of us that are going to share it.
Yeah, I think that's
And I
what
just
we'll
said I'd pay for it, doesn't matter, I'm going to try and collect.
Ooh, you tell them where to go.
We're gonna drive ours to your cul-de-sac.
Hey, you want to drive it to my cul-de-sac and fill it up? Go for it. Just don't expect me to come collect.
Oh, come on, I thought that was part of the service.
Nope.
Okay. All right, let's go to item number 13. This is a minutes review and acceptance of the May 18th, and the 2021 work session, the May 18, 2021 regular city council meeting. Any change to those minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
Second. Go ahead.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's move to our city council report. This city council meeting from Councilman McEwen.
Well, I'll give you a report from the Mosquito Abatement District. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to attend the last meeting. I was at a farewell for my colleague Angela Dunn, so I didn't make it back in time. But the topic items that we cover this time of year are the same that we cover every year. One thing that a lot of people, if they were to watch one of our meetings or listen to the recordings, we do a report on West Nile that is the number of deaths and the number of confirmed cases across the United States. And that is, it's a small number, but it's sobering because there's always someone dying of West Nile virus. Interestingly enough, during COVID, people forgot that West Nile was there, and it just became a secondary, but we're entering that season again. Typically, we start showing positive pools where West Nile is being detected right around the last week of June, first week of July is when that really starts to bloom, and we'll see that throughout the entire season. One of the things that is kind of the tagline for Mosquito Abatement District is one bite can change your life. We do have people who live through West Nile, but they end up with long-term consequences from it. So, and it's a very preventable if you wear a mosquito repellent at night, and if you make sure that you're denying mosquitoes water sources, then you're in good shape. So it's no different than any year. Spraying has begun. There was a question that Bill asked me earlier was why we weren't spraying. We're doing the fogging trucks. And at that time of year, just for future reference, if it's going lower than 55 degrees at night, the mosquitoes aren't flying, so there's no point in going out and fogging. And if you're expecting a wind, then they don't do the fogging either. So that's generally what does that. But the calls are coming in on a regular basis, people making their spray requests for their events. And the return rate is, interestingly enough, the same problem that exists for the temporary workforce for our group is the same that happens with the Mosquito Abatement District. They tend to have returning students or kids who go on a mission, or they come back and they work through college, but they're having the same struggles. They're looking at probably needing an increase in rate, because in order to compete, they need to be paying the biker crews somewhere around $15 an hour. And right now, they don't have the budget to do that. But that's something that you'll probably hear about later in the year, or next year for sure, a truth and taxation hearing coming out of the Mosquito Abatement District. Personally, I'll be honest, the $20 I pay a year and that line item is
Probably
yeah,
a multiple of Yeah, the benefit is a multiple of what you pay.
Yeah, I would gladly pay more on that one, and, we have that conversation every year with the Mosquito Abatement District as new members come onto the board. It's like, well, how come you can't kill more mosquitoes? And the answer is, we're killing about 90% of the mosquitoes as it is now. So what's left in Centerville is that 10%, and the cost to get to kill that 10% would actually be prohibitive, and you'd also be at the highest rate of like EPA chemical releases you can do. So, we're where we're going to be, but thank goodness they're out there. I really appreciate that Gary Hatch is our manager. He is a Centerville resident. He's done a fantastic job running that district and continues to do so. I hope he stays on for several more years. That's the report.
So have you any conversations or input about the value of zappers?
We talk about that. The most effective, so the bug zappers that have the lights are very effective. The CO2 traps are extremely effective. That's what we use for, if you go around the city, and occasionally you'll see one of those mosquito traps. There's two types that we use in the city, and one they put a little cube of dry ice in. The other they have a small CO2 tank, and that's what's most effective. So anything that generates CO2 is by far going to be the most effective one. So, but yeah, bug zappers are great. I wish more people would run them.
Okay.
Great.
Oh, the other question I was going to ask, do you have any comments about this news story that's floating around that we've got twice the hatching population or more than twice the hatching population we've had in the past couple of years?
I can't really comment on that one. Is that one coming out of the Salt Lake District, that story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, we've had some really interesting couple of years in terms of the water and some of the flow patterns have created some habitat. There's the Phragmite invasive species that they are trying to get rid of. But the problem is when you get rid of like the Phragmites out at the Duck Club, when you get rid of that, you create better habitat for mosquitoes. So whereas you're balancing out so you have more bird habitat, you're now creating more mosquito habitat. So yeah, it's a tough one. But from a numbers, I don't think the numbers so far support that it's any worse than any other year. The only thing that's really changed is our trapping methods have gotten better. So our nightly numbers in trapping are going up, and part of that just is how much CO2 we're releasing. Our traps were running out of CO2, so now they've dialed them in. They're actually capturing more, but they would have caught them anyway because it's the same total. So year over year, it's about the same, at least in Davis County, as far as I can tell you. But anyone who wants to tour the mosquito abatement facility, by all means, reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with Gary. It's an interesting little tour. And we do operate a lab there so they can do all their own PCR testing and detect West Nile here in Davis County. We don't have to go to the state health lab, which is really nice.
Which
it saves
really
some
improves
time.
your turnaround.
They can turn a PCR test around in a day.
No, that's what I say.
Yeah.
It's a day instead of a week.
Yeah, which is absolutely fantastic. And now that we're kind of tapering out of the COVID timeframe, plastics will get cheaper and we can do more testing and not be in competition for resources, because that was a real problem during the COVID period, is just getting hold of the basic plastics that you need to do testing. Really tough, and everything was really expensive. But again, Gary managed to squirrel away some good supplies, so we were in good shape.
Councilman Pion, is there anything from the Trails Committee in regards to, weren't they going to do a cleanup or a gathering or something?
I did not attend the last one. They met up in the park. It was the same night that I was out. But yes, they've talked about doing a cleanup, and I believe that is either taking place or will take place shortly.
Good. All right. Do they get that information to you for newsletter and that sort of thing when they're doing that sort of thing, or? Okay.
I'll mention it again
All right.
when we do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Good report. Next item, mayor's report. So in your packet, at our most recent COG meeting, since our last council meeting, it was presented to us a resolution on water saving. This came up a year ago, but it wasn't really discussed, but this year it was very serious. This is something that all 15 mayors unanimously supported. There's not big change, but it's, I guess, a resolution that makes you think about it, you know, that talks about the cities in Davis County being committed to actions such as actively promoting water conservation, set aside funds to replace old irrigation with smart watering systems, hours of operation. Of course, I took the opportunity to promote what we did at one of our parks, our community park, where, you know, we kind of recycle the water that we're putting on the fields as well too, and said that that's something that we had done and took a chance to promote us a bit. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, that it was in your packet. As you know, we went through a police week a couple of weeks ago and a public works week, and we tried to honor both our departments. And I also met with the LDS Community Council. It's a council made up of about 11 couples throughout Davis County, and in the south end of the county, they're looking to form an interfaith group with the cities down here as far as assisting and helping each other with the projects that they have going on with within these religious spaces. And then as many people in our community obviously have significant difficulties with the losing of loved ones, and we acknowledge all those people it happens to, but one of our workers and fighters for our community arts, Bill Davies, passed away, and they had his funeral last week. He and his wife were really involved with our Center Point Theater and what is taking place down there, and they actually had his service down there.
At the theater?
They did. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions for me? If not, that's what I had for my report. City Manager's report.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of items. One was already discussed during the public open session. I do feel there should be something done in that area, but we'll look at our options and again, try to keep the cost as low as possible, but give something nice to the area. Not opposed to a tree line, you know, trees along that fence line. Again, I think it's city-owned property. We have some responsibility to maintain it. It is a wetland, so again, it does create a whole different dynamic when we try to develop that area. But
The what? The water is not particularly inspiring.
Well, so Mike well, not just Mike, but Public Works had been diverting that water away from the pond, because we'd send it down our drainage. So we were diverting water away from it. But if there's desire to have water in it, then that's okay too.
Was there anything that causes it to circulate, or does it go in and just sit?
No, it circulates. It does circulate, which prevents the mosquitoes from hatching right in the area. There is circulation in that area that prevents the stagnation. Is it circulating enough? I don't know. I'm not the expert in that.
I'm certainly not an expert, but it doesn't appear to be.
I will say more than likely we were diverting water away to remove that wetland designation from it. So diverting water back just restarts that process. But
Well, is there anybody that wants the water there?
all of those property owners do. Mike
they do
Carlson
want
and
the
Bruce
water.
Cox met with the property owners and had a conversation, and they would like the pond to be
There
repaired.
seems to be a pretty big disconnect between what I'm hearing from Mike and Bruce and what I'm hearing from the residents.
Well, I think that's why it's going to be critical when we just develop again, regardless if the pond's there or not. I think there's some beautification. We'll bring that concept plan back to you. And if pond, no pond, I mean, we can go either direction, but we do have to respect Army Corps and what they
Sure.
want
Yeah.
there. But
I don't have a problem if we do water in there to get rid of I mean, it does have a nice, good green scum on it.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that everybody who has remarked on that has talked about the beautification. They haven't called it like trash or tree removal, and said, you guys did some great beautification. It's open and it looks, and it does, it looks nice.
I mean, even at a minimum, Bruce, I mean, we have some great mowers that even if you left it, really at a minimum, you know, Bruce and I have discussed this, we've got to keep those weeds knocked down, right? That's at a minimum. I mean, you could have the natural look and keep it a wetland area, just keep the weeds knocked down, and there's no need to install grass, but still, okay with the idea with trees.
Let's put a couple goats on there.
Put a couple of goats and we're good to go. Seriously, we could. But nonetheless, I think even leaving it natural.
To put the trees on, though, the shoreline arches, so along probably 3/4 of it, you've got a 10 to 20-foot
Yeah,
level space before it drops down into the pond.
right.
But there's a portion in the middle
It's only, I mean, it's
where it's
sloping right from the fence line.
Yeah, it's just right from the fence line. So you've almost got to do some build-up if you're going to try and put any trees in there.
That's the question, is what does Corrigan allow us to do? And so as much as, we don't want to overpromise these residents, because we are beholden to a federal agency. And,
How long would it take to fill so we can see what that looks like?
it's a great idea.
I'm just curious. I mean, if this is something where you can turn it on and we can look at it in a week and say that's.
It's on now. We're diverting it now. So since
That's
we
how
had
much
our
we're
neighborhood
filling?
meeting, that's been about 2 weeks, Councilmember Rents or so. So it's
You
been on
can
for about 2
clearly
weeks.
see that the water level is up significantly.
And I haven't driven by it.
I have been told that there are boards at the spillway, kind of like the old-fashioned thing that they used to do
Right.
with water rights, that dictate how much water goes into the pond, how much water goes on over. I don't know how that's going to circulate it. I mean, it looks like it's just going to push water in and then it's going to sit. It would seem to me that if you're going to circulate it, you've got to put a pipe at the inlet and then pipe it over to the upper end, and then it would cause it to flow through. I don't know, I mean, I'm not a water engineer, I understand, but if you're bringing water in and out of the same outlet, you're not going to get much movement up here.
Right, it's just gonna stir.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think if that's a simple thing that we can do, great. But I wasn't aware we were putting any into it. I guess I haven't really been marking the change. All I've been marking is that, you know, still looks kind of marshy back there and kind of stagnant water.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, as the case may be, I have a pretty good friend who's right down there and knows I'm on city council, and I get
So you heard
get
about
comments,
this,
I hear about it.
Good reports.
No, I get reports.
So we'll bring that item back to you when we have a chance to really sit down and develop that.
I do think the one thing that we talked about for our own benefit, if we're doing something like that around a neighborhood that's, even though we have no technical responsibility, it would be very wise to just put it on the to-do list, that we go talk to residents about it and let them know. That way, if they want to fight us, they can come fight. But this thing where people are complaining and being surprised is just an additional level of trouble. So I would say we ought to be telling people to do that. That's my say. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I agree with that. Could fish live in it? Could fish live in that water? What I'm thinking about is
don't have
the
a
fish
degree.
from the mosquito place. Because they used to bring them to my sister to put in a pond in her yard. If we could have the mosquito place, they would bring the fish and stock it. At least it would keep the mosquitoes down and out of the area, because they'll do that every spring. They bring out fish if you want them
for free.
for free. So
We can discuss that during that.
So just so that you know, that is a possibility for them to bring the fish out and put in
I've
there.
never heard of that.
Yeah, if you have a pond in your yard, they'll bring you so many fish every year to keep in your pond to eat the mosquitoes.
Yep, we actually grow them right there at the district. They have tanks and year-round we're hatching fish.
And they work great. I mean, my sister used to have a ton of mosquitoes in her yard. She's got like a fake fancy pond and put those fish in and they eat the mosquitoes pretty good.
I think it's good enough for other people that we could even advertise that social media.
Yeah, we probably ought to put that in the newsletter.
So to your point, Councilor Rents, yes, that's definitely become a focus of ours, and this highlights that. Now, we had a department head meeting, and I mentioned that we really need to step up our customer service game, right? And Mike Carlson has taken that challenge on, and just be mindful, whenever you have a meeting, how's this gonna impact the residents? And Mike has done really great. Again, just slurry seal, could be a map on a napkin, I don't care, but let's get it out there so people are aware when we're throwing down an overlay. I experienced this in a previous city where we did advertise it, but not in a good enough location. A resident had concrete coming that day, and so he lost that entire truck, right? So then it says, okay, how would you find this information? We had the conversation with that resident. He says, this is where I would look for it. So we had a really good conversation on where to post this type of information. So, we're in kind of this in-between generational where we get our news. We need to make sure it's still in print, but I mean, overwhelmingly, we're starting to see social media, Facebook, or websites, electronic is becoming more critical.
Well,
Maybe even a sign out in front of City Hall, right, Councilor?
there you go. Well, you've hit on
Let's go for it.
Yeah, the money's there. You've hit on the big thing, and that's why I was asking Kevin about getting in front of this, is I think,
Memorial
by
sign.
and large, most people are very reasonable, as long as they know what's going on.
Sure.
Even if it's something they hate, they at least are not being bushwhacked by it, and that's where we get in trouble is on these projects.
Right, so that's why it's critical that this, as a recreation coordinator position is full-time, that they'll have that emphasis. They're already doing social media, but this position will be full-time with that emphasis. They'll be part of the E-team meetings, and their primary role in those meetings will be how will this impact the residents, and be, posting it wherever we possibly can. As department heads and staff, we don't think it's sometimes how it impacts. We've got a job and we're sometimes myopic, but we need that person to come in and say, okay, how does this impact so-and-so? And we really need that voice in our staff meetings to kind of make sure we're reminded
You
of
can
that.
pose the question, how to keep the council out of my office, because they're calling us.
Just call me for something else is what you'll do.
Bill, I have no problem with putting this on the project list, but like I kind of telegraphed earlier, I don't think that we should do a huge investment there because it's all going to get messed up by UDOT's realignment. So like anything we
No,
do is.
I understand and I
Yeah.
agree. There's no sense pouring money down the drain.
Also, we, originally when we
Water,
discussed
not
this with Councilman Ranson, again, we're now getting real conversation here. But it's just putting in trees and keeping the weeds down. That's really, I've asked Bruce just to look for some really good medium-sized trees, and make that recommendation that cost is not gonna be great. That could be just the first phase, and then we can reevaluate grass or any sort. But let's talk about trees, because I do feel like I wanted trees there that look nice, because it's a nice area, so. Anyway,
And
Okay.
I think people aren't gonna be happy with the trees they're gonna get this year, but next year and the year after, and if they see them, and if it's just there on the east side, in theory, we're not gonna wipe it out too bad.
right, exactly.
Well, and that's kind of part of a larger discussion of the whole beautification of that corridor because we did sleeve water, if you remember, we sleeved water under the road so we would have it. But then there was all the talk, we didn't know what the realignment would look like. So I almost look at that as like one big project when we know what final realignment looks like, or that we can say, okay, great, UDOT, we want beautification down the corridor when you move it, because we have been stymied as a city for years because you keep telling us it's coming, so we haven't been able to do anything with the corridor. So I think it would be that plus this at the same time and just unify the look on both sides and ask UDOT to really participate in that, because it's UDOT's issue that we haven't been able to beautify that. And that's bugged me every day that I drive down. That's like, you hit Farmington, it's beautiful, but we haven't been able to do anything, even though we've tried and we've literally laid the piping. We haven't been able to do anything because of when is the realignment coming? When is the extra lane coming? So when they finally publish that plan, which triggers this other
2025
one.
to 2030.
Yeah, see,
It's
there
actually
you go.
Wasatch Front Regional Council just shared that in a meeting last week.
So 2025, we could start putting trees 20 feet over.
All right, next item.
So one other thing about that.
Sure.
Does anybody have responsibility to cut the grass on the west side of frontage?
So, I don't know if we're knocking it down or UDOT.
I think it's us.
I think it's nobody.
Wow. I think that's the case. I'll find out and I'll get back to you, because I honestly don't know. The area is owned by the state, but I believe we are maintaining the road, and I believe we have the responsibility of maintaining that area. And if it's us, we'll take care of it. Again, short-staffed, but we'll add
Yeah,
that to the list.
I do recall Randy talking about the selection of the trees and that he was involved in that, so I think we have some
I do, we have
culpability in
that
the maintenance.
responsibility. Okay, I'll follow up on that, thanks.
Okay.
The second item I have, coincidentally, Councilman Rivey asked me about the one-year warranty on Island View. Well, that same day, I received an email from our designer saying, hey, we're coming up on a 1 year on the Island View next month, wanting to schedule a walkthrough.
Excellent.
You saw it?
No, but I have plenty I'd like to say to them.
Sure, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. As of right now, the tentative is June 8th is the
You can't
tentative.
plan something with a slope that way on an east wind hill without thinking about the fact that all the mulch is going to end up at the neighbors.
Yeah, the mulch.
And all the sand is going to end up at the
Should we be
cemetery.
invoicing the neighbors for the mulch?
The neighbor might be invoicing us for the cleanup of the mulch.
So, I mean, that's June 8th, and so I think the feedback would be great, and sharing, having this conversation with Bruce.
It's
And
on the
also,
8th?
we can discuss, June 8th tentatively, 8th, 9th, or 10th is kind of where they're debating, and the 8th seems to work with most
But
people.
they're gonna come out?
Yes,
So
And are we going to go as a council and look at it?
that's entirely up to you. I mean, that's
That
not
would
a
be great.
requirement, but if you so wish to participate, just let us know, because we'll have to notice if we have more than 3.
Outside of
Yes.
outside of the ground cover issues
In the neighborhood.
that have been noted, do we have any punch list items of
There are some
defective
punch
equipment?
list items
Yes,
as part of this
mine's
email,
right
and that's
there
why
in
they
my
want to
note.
figure out what the punch lists are, because they have until July 7th, and they need some time to get the other items addressed if there are going to be issues.
I'd like the council to be notified. I'd like to be there if I can.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. I'm letting you know now, but when it's finalized, I'll send the email out.
Speaking of that, where are we on the shade?
The shade analysis is
They're not.
complete, and this is part of that conversation that we need to have, because in all honesty, this park can be phased in, and that's the conversation I had with Bruce. Is this an opportunity for you as a council to even consider what phases? Do we want it, shade could be another phase, or other amenities could be another phase. I think there were some items we left off on the top tier, like basketball courts, so those still a consideration. So anyway, we can phase it. So this is an opportunity to figure out what's worked well, what hasn't, and then possibly discuss future opportunities to improve the park.
Well, I promise not to attend, so you don't have to notice, but I would like to see the final punch list of what are the defects.
Okay, great.
Because my hope is it's easily correctable items, and we don't have any safety hazards that have opened up.
Are there safety hazards?
Final
I haven't
punch list
climbed
dated
up
August
the thing
5th.
to see if they've fixed the,
Punch list walk through July 7th.
we do see people standing on top of the pavilion and on top of the climbing thing.
But we've got signage on that, right? That says don't?
Don't stand on the roof?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of these things where you. kids-
On top of the pavilion,
The
over
roof
the
is to
eat?
protect your head, not
eating
pushing your
area?
feet?
Yeah.
Really?
Good have signs. So, and then the last item I have, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, just give you an update on summer rec, or the lack thereof. Apologize for that. I opened it up with a negative comment, but
Well, I mean, obviously at the beginning of this year, when COVID was still kind of in full swing, there was a lot of unknowns about whether summer rec could happen or if it was gonna happen or not, but I tried to go ahead and recreate a little bit of what we did last year during COVID, of just having a few outdoor, smaller sized summer rec classes, and had them ready in case we were able to move forward with summer rec, which we did open up some of them, and there was a lot of excitement, and several of the classes filled up pretty quickly. But as I think Brent talked about earlier, there is kind of an employment shortage. We're short a lot of park seasonal workers, and I didn't hardly receive any applications for instructors for those classes except for a few tennis instructors. So as of right now, we do have tennis classes moving forward with a few kids in those, but I don't have any other instructors to cover the rest of the classes. So for now, actually just today I started issuing refunds for some of the other summer rec classes for session 1. I still have session 2 in place, but we'd have to find instructors to staff those in the next month, or else they won't happen either.
we've advertised in a number of places. I'd like to keep at least one of these, so if you're aware of somebody, I mean, we had one 16-year-old young lady that's willing to teach, but we can't allow that to occur. We need
Why is that?
duplicate and underage, so there's a couple, we want.
You have to at least 2 people, or it would take it.
So if you're aware of someone that could help, I mean, it'd be great if we could still have at
So
least
how old do
one.
they have to be?
Well, we don't like hiring anybody under 18, to be frank, but,
Old enough to be bondable?
yeah, we don't like hiring anybody. Lisa will attest to that. We've talked
What are the
about this.
classes we're talking?
An 18-year older, there comes Lisa.
We thought you'd gone to sleep.
No, I'm still here. It's fascinating. I love hearing all about the pond.
I don't know if she's being facetious or not.
And I thought you were honest.
No, she used the F word, fascinating, so we know.
Can't tell.
Anyway, no, I've worked with Bruce this year because he had the same comment of, can we reduce the age of hiring? Our policy has been 18 and over because there's more regulations on the hours of work, and you have to give 16 and 17-year-olds more break periods, more time off, those sorts of things, and they're also a higher liability. So my recommendation is always 18 and over, but if we have to make some exceptions some years. then-
We haven't had 18-year-olds in summer rec before, have we? I thought they were all high school kids.
Yeah, often in the past, summer recreation has been high school and younger college
Yeah,
kids.
it's all been
but-
high school kids that have taught it.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe it's
That
just
was
the
my understanding.
rec, because they also cannot operate machinery and things like that, so maybe it hasn't been the same
Yeah, I don't
recommendation.
know, I mean, I'm not talking about the park, but I'm just talking about city rec, the ones that taught the drill and the arts and crafts and all of that, and I don't think any of them were 18.
Okay,
So this is
well,
our last plea, because I think Jennifer's done a great job trying to get it out there and by doing double duty at the same time, being city recorder. But if you have anybody in mind or.
So can we get 16 or 17-year-olds for like arts and craft classes? Because like Robin says, I know that they've used them in their past because my kids did it.
Right, right,
What are we paying them?
yeah.
What's the pay?
Traditionally, in the past, it has been minimum wage, but last year, for our few arts and crafts and a couple other classes, I think I was doing like $8.50, $9 an hour, depending on their age and experience, so,
No,
yeah.
George isn't gonna apply, you're not paying him.
No, it's just a reality. Anything that's under $12 an hour right now, it's just a no-go for kids even, because they got those opportunities available to them. Even in town, those opportunities are available.
But we do have an opportunity, with COVID, you're still gonna have people hesitant to enroll their kids, but there's an opportunity with hiring a new recreation. We're calling the position Recreation Event Coordinator. We want them to be a little bit more involved in the other events as well. But there's an opportunity to really redefine recreation for next year. I think there's a lot of things we can build from that work really well, and I think there's an opportunity to expand the program.
I'd like the council to be part of that and have some work meetings so that you and they know what direction we'd like you to go in.
Well, we're gonna have the hiring process, so that could be the next item on my list of who wants to be involved in the interview hiring process.
For the recreation event coordinator, rec for short. Gotcha.
But I think what Robin's saying is, we don't want to hire someone and say, hey, we want a program. We already have some ideas of what we want and what we don't want.
Sure.
And we don't want to say, you're the new person, oh, and by the way, we want to do that in the other order. Say, here's what we're kind of looking for.
So I'm gonna
Are
push
you
back
the
and say
person?
cart horse issue here, right? You know, if we find a person that really excels in one area and you're saying, this is what we want, I think having an idea what we want with the interview panel and then looking at the people and the candidates we have, you might be able to fit that in. So saying we want X, I think sometimes is a disservice when you're going through a recruitment process. But that's when, if you select a council member to be part of the interview panel, then that person can come. I agree. So
I would like to make a recommendation that Robin and Stephanie help you with that panel.
I second that recommendation.
I think so. I mean, I think, Councilmember Makeup and I have had a number of conversations about this.
I'm pretty passionate about it.
And I think her input and her her involvement in the past would be critical. I don't want to have this crazy interview panel,
Right.
but I think that input, regardless of being on the council, Councilor Meekum.
He's calling me crazy, but it's all right.
Well, it's not the first time.
I wouldn't say it publicly.
You're always such a good friend, Bill.
So anyway, that's,
Unless
we
somebody
just,
named Ken who calls you crazy.
Jacob, have we posted that position officially?
Yeah, it's good.
So we have it open for 3 weeks?
June 11th.
June 11th. We kept it open short with an open till field and first review June 11th to try and speed up and get someone in place. So if you know anybody, please encourage them.
So is it a full-time job or it's not a
It's going to
full-time?
be full-time, and I think you're going to change the number of people that will apply because it comes with
Yeah, I do
benefits.
too.
And it's going to be desirable because you will have people looking for the benefits. And that's,
Is there anything we can do to strongly encourage a Centerville resident?
Sure.
Give preference to a Centerville resident?
I would solicit those that you think would be great, and that could be considered as part of the interview process, that you have, your reference, or, please encourage Centerville City residents. I mean, that's who we really
No,
would like
I
to see.
understand, but I'd really like to see us give preference to the Centerville city resident, because I think if you do that, you have a much greater likelihood of having the same person stay a while.
I'll tell you that, interview panels, generally, that's the approach we take.
Okay, great.
Don't necessarily state that's a preference, you're still looking for the right candidate, but it does
Give you
play,
extra point.
does play a role.
Are you done?
Meets that definition.
I feel like I was just at home for just a minute with my wife.
The look, too.
Apparently I am. Yes, I am complete, Councilmember Meekum.
I think
I have nothing further.
that was more PC than next item.
See, it's time, I gotta go home, my alarm's going off. No, as Mayor Pro Tem, I have something to say. I'm sorry, I lost my brain a little while ago. I got so focused on the budget, I forgot what I was gonna say. But since the budget is still open, I would like, everybody knew and nobody says anything.
I kept looking around the Councilman Ince like this, and I thought when we postponed it that you were
I'm
just
just off in my
just
own.
backing off,
Well, I was
so
looking
I
at the
didn't say
numbers and I
anything.
got
Second?
excited. Anyway, I had been very concerned about the crime in our town, our city. I've had many residents approach me about the crime that's happened to them, and neighbors are having it and it's hitting Facebook. People are very concerned about what's going on our streets while they're asleep and while they're at night. And I have approached the police chief with probably more ideas than he is appreciating, but I had actually found an idea that he seemed to really think would help and that I think would help. And what I would like to do is, the state has different pools of money where an officer can take a shift, and that shift is, the only thing he's allowed to do is whatever shift he takes, whether it's a DUI, whether it's unregistered vehicles. Well, as a city, I would like to propose that we put, between $40,000 and $50,000 into something like that and test it out, that we would have our officers who would already have their own cars, already have their own uniforms, we're already paying their insurance. So it'd be way less expensive than hiring new officers, but they could pick these shifts up at night, and the only thing they would do would be go through our neighborhoods and look for prowlers or people that shouldn't be there. And then the other officers that would would be able to back them up if they were to find something. But I'd like to see if we couldn't make our streets a little safer while we're sleeping. And with being in the budget right now, I'd like to get another $40,000, $50,000 in that budget to where we can put that into where our police chief can set it up so that his officers can pick shifts at night in order to, there'll be overtime shifts, and they'll be able to go out and look for the people in our town that should not be there.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, it's an awesome compromise to where Bill and I were on, well, let's get 2 officers, and you've actually got a practical idea that's easily implementable. I'm 100% behind it. I think it's great. And then once the chief tells us what the effectiveness is, we can look at programming it into the future as a stopgap. Still want officers, though. I would love to have more coverage at night on a regular basis, but this at least plugs the hole potentially.
Well, we've got 6 months before we're gonna have that because of the study.
Right.
This gives us some coverage during the 6 months.
Yeah, it is
And it'll be
awesome.
interesting to see how it works, and I think if it's got some good numbers, then I'm willing to go talk to other councils around us and see if they'll do the same thing, so that, you know, if we can get our areas kind of cleaned back out again, I think.
Because with that one incident, there is clearly overlap between the cities. The
Oh,
burglars
yeah.
don't particularly
Almost.
respect the lines.
Yeah, I know of 3 that were hit in Centerville and Bountiful, Woods Cross, West Bountiful, all on the same night. And so I think that it would be, you know, if they'd been stopped in Woods Cross, they wouldn't have got to Centerville or vice versa. So I would like to propose that we look at coming up with that.
I think we should do it, and in addition to that, make sure that it's made very public that we are increasing our police presence, not just add the 50,000, but we actually tie that with some public releases that we are upping the number of available officers at
And
night.
let's not say that it's one. We're
No.
just upping the number of cars on
No, we're
duty
upping
at
the
night.
number of officers at night
Because
who
who
will
knows,
patrol.
maybe 2 officers will take wake shot shifts on the same night. I mean, well, shifts are gonna be out there, they can take them, so yeah, we can just put out there that
Yeah.
it's, you know, we're gonna have extra officers patrolling our neighborhoods at night. I think it will really make the citizens happy, the ones that are like me that wander around the house looking at things in the middle of the night, to see a police officer drive by. I see them all the time, my house is well protected.
Yeah, well, you have a certain advantage.
Does the state chip in?
It won't on this, but on,
They do
the
on
state
other
has their
topics.
own. They have several. They have one for DUIs, they have one for
Distracted driving.
distracted driving,
seatbelts.
seat belts. We have officers quite often that are just out looking for people without their seat belts all day long. That's the only thing they do.
But it's a great seed to ask that question to our local legislators as to, let's start moving some funds around when we get these hot spots. I mean,
Right.
there's general policing, and then there's upping the game.
Yeah.
I think the state should kick in on.
That's a good idea.
Because the state is creating the problem by increasing the population density and bringing everyone to Utah, so the state can help us out as a community.
They're also creating the problem because we can't get anybody taken to jail.
Right.
So, I'd like, you know, for our staff to look for money. One of the ideas was, the council contingency, but I don't really want to use all of that. I don't know.
So I will, if I could, Councilor Meekum. So Chief Child and Councilor Meekum, I discussed this today, and Chief Child, there's $40,000 budget in next year's budget for special contingency. And really where that is there's just opportunity for the council to use those funds at discretion. Some other things go in there, miscellaneous items. But the proposal or the thought between the chief and myself was $30,000 as essentially the pilot, right? And we see where it goes. And that leaves some funding in that special contingency. But if the property tax increase, and this is where Councilor Meekum won't share, if the property tax increase is passed, this would be a great use for those funds. That could either replenish that fund if necessary, or we could expand the program. And so I think it's in the budget. There's some opportunity to use that. The $40,000 in the special contingency is not programmed, essentially is what I'm saying.
So since it's not programmed, but you know what the council's intent is, it seems like you couldn't get this going pretty quickly.
Well, I would even say we do have some overtime funds from this year that we can actually start on the program now. So Jacob and I met and we discussed that if they want to get going on it right now, and Councilor McCune, to your point, that's exactly the message that we want to get out there is the council's committed to this. They're tired of their residents being victimized, and we're committing funds to this. And we posted on Facebook, particularly the Centerville City Police Department and KUTV, KSL, they'll pick that up, and we'll even lobby and say we want to advocate for this, and just let you know that we're doing this, and this is just the beginning if we're looking for change, so.
Yeah, so from my perspective, we don't need to wait for the full budget cycle, we
You
just
don't.
go now.
We're proceeding, and again, that special contingencies, and Councilor Meekum just wants to make sure, I guess the thought is make sure we use those funds for that. So now it's being programmed.
It's a fantastic use,
I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea. It really is.
We'll proceed. I'll have a conversation with Chief, and we'll make those shifts available. Again, we could see 2 a night, 3 a night, 1 a night, but that's the plan. You
That's the
don't
best
know.
part. The
And
person
we'll-
out there doesn't know.
And we'll randomize our patrols so criminals can't catch on to where we're gonna be at certain days, and we'll keep it. There's other opportunities as well, and it'll be important for we have other items that are sometimes out there that our officers don't get to see, like trailers parked on the street for 5 days,
Right.
where they can notify those sector.
Well, and this officer where he's not gonna get called out on a domestic, or he's not gonna get called to Walmart, he's gonna be able to knock on people's doors at 3 a.m. and tell them their garage door is open, which has happened to me a couple of times. And, I appreciate that after I get back to sleep. So I think it would, I think that's another thing, he could even get out, do a little walking and see cars that are open or whatever, and notify people of, your laptop's on your front seat. I just seen it, somebody else is gonna see it. He can do some things where that's the only thing he has to do, is worry about prowlers that we can get, because we do have a lot of unlocked
Well, you
things.
pointed out one thing, and that's, I think, part of the broader message to the community is you gotta look out for your neighbors. If you see they've left a laptop in their car, go knock on their door. Tell them you've left a laptop in your car. Oh, hey, by the way, your garage is open. My neighbors, I've been blessed with great neighbors who spot stuff seconds before something goes wrong and lets everyone know. And so we can't totally rely on our officers to do that. They can help us, but the message should also include, hey, watch out for your neighbors.
That's right, and you never know, because sometimes Councilwoman Meekum goes out driving around looking for people. Oh, what I'm gonna do when I find one, but I'm still checking on them.
You'll call one of our extra patrols.
As long as you've called dispatch in advance and told them the make and model of your car, I'll tell you that's an important part. So you're not the one they're looking for.
Let's just keep you off the road after 1 a.m.
Hey.
I'll
that's
drive
when
with you.
Okay, that's when I do my mess bus work.
I actually thought of that. Good that you did.
Thank you.
So do we need a formal resolution? We're done.
No, you've given us direction as staff on how those funds, how this council would like us to use those funds. And
You can talk again if you'd like.
oh, you're so kind, but I'm done. Thank you very much.
Were you done?
Were you done?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council's adjourned.